Welcome to the TEDxPlattsburgh podcast series. I'm Stephane Bilodeau, accompanied by my great colleague and friend, Dr. Ayse Basak Cinar. Hi, Ayse. So today we have an incredible guest to exchange with, a leader and a woman who has transformed adversity into opportunity and achieved so much in the UK and beyond. Mary Turner Thomson is managing director at the Book Whispers Community Interest Company. She's also an international best-selling author and a motivational speaker. So Ayse, please introduce our guest speaker for today.
Sure, it's a privilege. So, Mary Turner Thompson is an international best-selling author, speaker, trainer, writing coach, publishing consultant, and tech-savvy entrepreneur. Wow. So, after starting her career in television and corporate video production, Mary is now dedicated to sharing her knowledge and experiences with a wider audience. Through her books and engaging talks, she has touched the lives of countless readers and event attendees, empowering them to overcome adversity and transform their lives. She began telling her story in her first book, The Bigamist. In her second bestseller, The Psychopath, she delves deeper into Will's betrayal, telling an entirely new story of how she moved on and helped other women to do the same.
Great and outstanding outcome. And I can add, by the way, that Mary is not only an expert in the field of writing, publishing, and even understanding Psychopath. She's an example, a woman of resilience, a powerhouse of motivation. I like this expression that you're using, and an advocate of female empowerment. That's a topic of great importance for us at TEDxPlattsburgh. So, Mary, if I may, today we'll
Hello.
listen to you, a remarkable and generous leader. Let's start with some questions for you. And Ayse, I will let you begin with the very first question.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. I'm excited to ask the first question. Mary, how does having a purpose, maybe a childhood dream, plays a role in your success?
Weirdly enough, my childhood dream was to be an author. And all my life, I never thought in a million years it would ever happen. It's kind of like, when you're a child and someone says, oh, I want to be a film star, or I want to be a pop star, or things like that. With me, it was, that kind of little secret desire was, wouldn't it be awesome to be an author? And just, it never, I always thought one day I'll write a book, somehow I'll find a way to do it. But it was very, very distant kind of dream. So, I'm still stunned today, what if it's 17 years later after publishing my first book, that actually I am an author. It's that kind of huge childhood dream. So it kind of keeps me going today, in the sense of, sort of like, I'm still stunned I've done it. So it plays a really big role in what I'm doing, and my enjoyment I get out of it as well, because with the Book Whisperers, I'm also helping other people become authors. So I'm helping them achieve the dream I had. So maybe a bit quicker and a bit easier than I did. So, that sort of, it plays a massive part in my daily life now. And, sort of like realizing that dream after so many years is just really quite spectacular.
Absolutely spectacular. Thank you for this answer. So could you please tell us about your journey transforming adversity, but leading you to become a best-selling author and also a managing director in an organization?
Sure. It's a sort of two-stage process, because they happened in two stages. I was around about the year 2000. I was a business advisor to the Scottish Enterprise Network. So that equates to the fact I was a professional busybody. So I would go into people's companies, look at what they were doing with their businesses, and then tell them how to run them better. So to make them more profitable, to make them able to employ more people, and therefore, so it was funded through the Scottish government. So it was a great fun job. I loved it. And I was married. I had 3 children, not particularly in that order. And then it was 2006, I got a phone call from my husband's other wife. And turned out not only did he have another wife, but he had 5 children with her. He had 2 children with their nanny. He had children all over the place. In fact, we knew at the time had 10 children. even though he told me and 5 of his fiancées that year that he was infertile and he couldn't have kids. So I was stunned. Also turned out I realised that he'd taken every single penny I had. He'd ripped me off for about £200,000. He'd taken out credit cards in my name and left me £56,000 in debt. So here I was in April 2006, and I had lost everything: my husband, my car, my life insurance, my money, my house. I was literally a bedrock. But I had kept the 3 things that mattered most in my life, which is my 3 children. I crumbled for a while, but then I actually thought, okay, we teach our children by example. We teach our children, if you want your children to not smoke, then don't sit with a cigarette in front of them smoking away going, don't smoke, kids. If you want your kids to cross the road carefully, then when you're crossing with them, you cross carefully. You lead by example. They'll always do what you say, do, not what you say. And I thought, okay, well, what would I advise my children to do in this kind of circumstance? And I certainly wouldn't have said, lie down in a puddle and just cry for the rest of your life. I wouldn't have said, give up and don't trust people. I would have said, pick yourself up, do something with the experience, try and help other people with it, and make something of it. You've got you're at bedrock, so build yourself up from there. So that's what I did. I decided that it was a golden opportunity to teach my children how to deal with adversity. And I walked into a bookshop and said, okay, this happened. I want to read a book about it. And they said, not been done. No bigamist's wife had come forward before and written a book about being a bigamist's wife. So I walked into a publisher instead and said, this happened to me. I'm going to write a book about it. And they grabbed it with both hands and said, yes, we'll have that, because it'd never been done before. And so literally I just sat down and in 3 months wrote the book. And from there, literally built myself up again. So built myself up from scratch with nothing to becoming an international best-selling author and actually making a living from being an author, which is quite rare. And, and it's just incredibly empowering. And not just, I'm sorry, this is a very long story, but not just because it was cathartic to write it, and it was amazing to publish it and actually make some income from it, but also because I still get now, and it was published in 2007, and I still today get, so this is 16 years later, I still get letters about twice a day from people who have read my book saying it has changed their lives. And that if I can stand up without any kind of embarrassment or shame and talk about this, then, they shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed about their partner having an affair, or they shouldn't be, etc. And so, the fact that it actually has that kind of impact on people is really, really incredible to me, because it means the experience I went through wasn't wasted. And it means it has some value. So that was part 1 of it, of how I became an author. Part 2 is that in the pandemic, 2020, March 2020, me and 2 other authors sat down and had a sausage sandwich in a garden centre, knowing that within a couple of days we were going into lockdown. And we sat there going, we're not nurses, we're not frontline workers. What can we do as authors to help our community? And we had this brainchild of saying, okay, we'll start a community. Well, people have always said to us, well, I would write a book if I had the time, like I had just loads of time, and that's why I wrote it. But so we kind of went, well, one thing everyone's going to have now is time in lockdown. So why don't we help them write that book they always wanted to write? So we thought about 20 or 30 people would join us on this Facebook group we started, and we started some courses, and we were doing Monday Night Lives and stuff. And within a week, we had over 1,000 people join us. And we thought, my gosh, there is demand for this. So for 18 months, we did podcasts and radio shows and comedy shows and everything. The 3 of us just sort of like entertaining people, but also encouraging them to write and giving them permission to write as well. Because a lot of people kind of feel like they need somebody to say, yeah, it's okay. Doesn't matter if you're great, write. That's how you learn. That's how you develop your craft. And we've published a couple of anthologies, so we're working on people's self-esteem and writing as well. And after 18 months of doing this purely voluntary, we set it up as a community interest company. And it's been going from strength to strength ever since, because there is a massive demand for people who actually want to have some sort of support and help, and someone to go to say, what do I do? How do I do this? How do I learn this? How do I find an illustrator? How do I etc. And so we've now set up an online community platform called the bookwhispererscommunity.com, where people can join for free, or they can join as writers or authors, and they can connect with other people. So we're bringing that kind of community together on a sort of like one purely book orientated platform, and that's just growing and growing, which is wonderful. So it's really quite a long journey getting from being, sort of, that's like 23 years in a nutshell there.
It's an
Big
incredible
nutshell.
story as well. As you said, it's incredible to you, as you said, but it's also incredible to us and to so many as well. So great story. And it's not only the struggle, it's how you dealt with it and you built on it, starting from scratch, as you said, and you
Yeah.
shared this experience with others. That's absolutely awesome. Ayse, I think you have another question you wanted to ask, so I'll
Yeah.
let you go ahead with it.
Yeah, I'm also thrilled by this story, Mary. So I'm just wondering how you use this life journey to empower other women, because many women in the world need to hear these stories and feel that they are not alone. But do you have a specific way to empower the woman?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things, I mean, 85% of the people who read my books are women over the age of 30. And I think the reason for that is because most women have experienced some sort of toxic relationship in their life. It might be partner, might be sibling, might be parent, might be co-worker, etc. But I mean, most women, are have experienced that. I think most men have as well, but they're not quite there yet in exploring how they feel about that. So most of my audience is women for a start, and women have a real propensity for victim shaming. And I don't mean just victim shaming other people. Women have a real propensity for victim shaming themselves, and actually saying, oh, it was my fault. So what did I do wrong? And so one of the things that I did when I came out, I was, and I'm sorry, I'm very open about this subject, and I because I've written about it, I have no angst with regard to this. But I was sexually abused when I was a child, and what happened finished when I was stopped when I was 6 years old. But I tortured myself for 20 years. So when I was 26, I was still suffering from this experience I had as a young child, mostly because I blamed myself. So because I had participated in this game, I had been part of it, and therefore I must be as bad as this perpetrator. And at 26, I just started going, actually, no. And I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore, and I wasn't going to victimize myself anymore. And I wasn't going to sit there saying that I was to blame, because I was a child. I had no idea what was going on, and I didn't have the language to tell anyone what was going on, or anything like that. So I actually made that very conscious decision when I was 26 that I was going to stop doing that. And so when this happened to me, and I realized that I'd been a victim of another predator, I immediately went, I am not doing that again. And I've been there. I know how to get out of it. I'm not even going into it in the first place. So because I'd had that experience before, it was much easier for me to kind of go, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to shame myself. And I wasn't embarrassed, or excuse me, I wasn't embarrassed or ashamed of what had happened to me. And people, when I first wrote the first book, The Bigamist, when I first wrote it, people said, are you going to write it under your own name? And there was this kind of perception of that I should in some way be embarrassed, that my husband is a con man and a liar and a cheat and various worse things. And, I was kind of going, yes, I'm going to write it under my own name. There's no reason why I wouldn't. And I think that sort of really struck me and really sort of made me think, actually, why do people have that perception that if you've been a victim of a crime, you should be ashamed? Nobody should ever have to feel ashamed of having been a victim of a crime. They weren't at fault. The perpetrator was, the criminal was.
Absolutely.
That's something that I think, I think just talking about it and airing it and allowing women to see that there's somebody here who's going, no, I was a victim to this crime. Yes, I might have been naive because I didn't know about psychopaths, but now what I'm doing is trying to educate other people about psychopaths so they don't get caught the same way. And so it's gonna, but you still get people that try and put the victims down. If you've been conned, oh, you must be a bit stupid, you must have been a bit desperate, or needy or something. There must have been something about you that attracted the psychopath or the con man. And it's like, and it's easier, I think, for people to blame a victim because the victim's at fault, then they're never in danger, because they'd never be that stupid, or they'd never be that naive, or they'd never be that needy. Whatever it is, it means that they're safe. So it's a lot of fear on the victim shamers part, that it means that if the victim's at fault, then they're not in danger. Does that make sense?
Absolutely making
Yeah.
sense. I think it's the shamers the issue, not the victims, because
Yeah.
exactly that.
But it's also,
that
it's fear,
Mhm,
because I mean, quite normal, kind of lovely women will end up, looking at other women and saying, oh, well, they're kind of to blame, and
mhm,
it's because it's, in a lot of ways, it's the way we've been brought up. It's generational, that women do tend to blame. We tend to blame ourselves for things. And, so it's a very easy trap to fall into. What did I do? I see myself like the zebra that got away from the lion. All right. And the zebra, if it gets caught by a lion and gets away, runs away going, I'm free. I got free, as opposed to spends the rest of its life going, I got caught by a lion,
mhm,
and it's like, and that's the way I want, I want to convey to people, you don't have to stay within trauma. You can let it go and move on and say, I've learned from this, I've grown from this, but my life starts from here onwards. And I'm not going to hold on to that sack of pain that I've been dragging around with me. And, that's, as I say, a lot of people kind of need permission to do that.
mhm.
So people are always very surprised when they meet me, and I'm quite a cheerful, upbeat kind of person. They sort of, especially if they read the books, they kind of expect me to be a bit miserable, because I've had a traumatic experience. But and what we've covered with regard to the Bigamist story is just the very, very tip of the iceberg. It's there was a lot of psychological torture going on and stuff like that as well. But I'll leave that for people who want to read the book. But yeah, so it's like I have had that, but I'm not in it anymore. And that's the lesson I learned, that what happened to me as a child happened until I was 6 years old. And by the way, it had nothing to do with my family, but happened to me when I was 6 years old. But everything that happened to me from 6 to 26, I did to myself. And you can choose not to. You can choose just to go, no, not doing that.
Like the zebra in the savannah, I think, effectively, that
Yes.
survived to the lion's attack. So great
I'm actually,
image.
I'm actually writing a children's book called The Zebra That Got Away from the Lion, because I've used that analogy so often. And it's not really to make any money on it. It's just because I want, the people that look at that book and they can read it to their kids. And it's all about basically not victim shaming. And it's just the amount of animals tell the zebra that it should be, should be ashamed. It should have done something else, and it wouldn't
An
have got
important
caught.
message.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
great.
it's just a wee. I'm not going to go into writing children's books generally, but just that one just had to be done,
And as you said, with your own experience, it started really early when you were a child. So it's
Yeah.
never too soon to learn
Yes.
to survive as a victim
Yeah.
of something that's a struggle, a tragedy, or whatever.
Yeah.
Great message anyway. Talking about this, how as as a resilient mindset, you gave us many examples of how you in fact integrated that, but how has played a role in this long journey that you went through in the savannah
Yeah.
and beyond? So
All the way there and back again. Yeah.
yeah.
How has resilience played a part? Well, I think, I got my resilience really from my mum for a start, because my mum was a massive, massive part of my life. She was my best friend, most amazing lady. I miss her every day. She unfortunately died within a few months of me finding out my husband was a bigamist. So 2006, not a great year for me, but she did teach me an awful lot of things. And one of the things she said was write it down. And I learned that kind of philosophy from her, which was that if you want your kids to be happy, you have to be happy. If you want your kids to be hardworking, you have to be hardworking. If you want, and all that kind of thing. So it was. I think I got a lot of my resilience because of the love of my mother. And actually, I'm writing a novel. It's coming out this year. I've written a novel which is coming out this year, which is called Hindsight, which is exactly that. It's the exploration of two different women in two different time zones, one of which had a mother who was very supportive and one who didn't, and how that affects people and how it affects their mental health, because it really does. Your relationship with your parent, and your parents actually can make a really, really huge impact on how resilient you are. But I think, if you're aware of that and you're aware that you didn't have that supportive relationship in the past, it's something you can then address by looking at other role models and choosing your own role models to follow. But yeah, so my resilience, I think, comes from my family background and having that loving, supporting family. And I think it's a weird word, resilience, isn't it? It's something that comes up from kind of. I'll tell you a wee story that my mother used to tell me, and that sort of
Go
helps.
ahead. We're
She
all
used
ears.
to she used to say that there was a rock this size kind of rock, so about, so half a football size, and that it was right inside my chest, and it didn't matter what happened to me or where I went, that rock would always be there. No one could take it from me. No one can do it. And I can stand on that rock and I would always be secure. And that rock was my family, the love my mother had for me. And that's where I think my resilience comes from, is that rock is still there and it is solid and it is impenetrable and it is just, no one can touch it and no one can take it away from me. And it's always going to be there.
Really
And,
nice image.
Yeah,
Great
and it really, and that has stood me in really good stead. And I think, everyone can get that rock if they just kind of go, there is a part of me no one can touch, and anything happens can touch this. This is mine, and I am going to hold on to this and build on it, and it gives me something an anchor to kind of stand on.